Kota and I begin heading east towards Nebraska. Wyoming is relatively flat in this area. You can see forever. The beauty in the landscape is really in its simplicity and its solitude. Small towns in Wyoming, and small towns anywhere in America always make me wonder what people do really for a living there, how they got there, why these towns still kind of exist. This was actually a little bit busy of a town. Small, not a lot there, but it's got some history. It actually had a relatively large cemetery. I know in Colorado, a lot of the small towns are leftovers from the railroad days, where they were railroad stops where, they would generally have to take on water. Some of them were also affiliated with, mining. Out here in the plains, I don't know. I mean, it could be the railroad for a stop for maybe cattle drives. But it's always interesting to look at the architecture, see, if there is any really new construction. This town did have some, so it's not dead. But I wonder, what is life like in a really small town that's isolated from so much of the rest of the country? As we head out of town, the road ends. They were doing road construction and they'd actually removed the old road. So, I don't know, it was like 40 miles of dirt road that was relatively rough, flat, and, traffic kind of got backed up. There was one section, where everybody had to follow a pilot car. Finally, we get back on some hard road. And here we're getting close to the Nebraska border. And you can see some of the rock formations in the back of this little town. It's still really flat here, and here it is. We are now in Nebraska. And it's a little bit of the continuation. You're seeing a little bit more of the rock formations. And this is unique kind of to this area of Nebraska. I haven't seen it anywhere else I've been. Get into some treed area, and this is an overlook as you're approaching Fort Robinson. The camera doesn't really do it justice, but there's a lot of variation in the terrain here, and you can kind of see it as we're descending down into the it's kind of a valley. It's amazing how far you can see in the west. And here's some of the larger rock formations. And actually, that section was between Fort Robinson and Crawford. We are in the little town of Crawford right now, which is about 3 miles from Fort Robinson. And I had to run into the little grocery store here, pick some stuff up. Quiet little town. It's definitely old. I don't know if this was, a direct result of Fort Robinson, or if this existed kind of on its own. But it doesn't look like there's been a lot of development or anything in the area. It's just kind of hanging on. Here's the entrance into Fort Robinson from Crawford. And it's on the main road, so you just drive through it if you were traveling on the road. This is the entrance into the campground where I stayed. There's actually 2 campgrounds off of this road. You can see some of the large old cottonwood trees and some of the old buildings on the side. And here Kota picks up her 3rd state, Nebraska, and so does the trailer. This is some older trees. And you can see this large cottonwood tree is probably a witness tree. It was probably there when some of the main events happened at this fort, such as the Cheyenne outbreak. These are replica buildings of what was originally there, to give you an idea of what the life was like in the late 1800s. This base featured a lot of what was known as the Buffalo Soldiers. They were black soldiers. I believe the Buffalo Soldier name was actually given to them by the Native Americans. This is actually the spot where a crazy horse was killed. That's some of the old, I can't remember if that first building was the veterinary hospital, but a lot of them are barns. Basically stables for the horses. There's the firehouse. And a lot of the buildings that you can see there are actually available for rent, so you can stay in various cabins that were officers' quarters and everything. And this is the view from behind those buildings. And those upper bluffs that would have been pretty easy to spy on that fort in the early days. Now we are heading towards a really unique area, Toadstool Geological Park. This is kind of Nebraska's Badlands, and you can see some of the terrain here changing, and it's weird. You'll go through and you'll see this kind of rugged desert, harsh terrain, and then you'll rise up a little bit and it'll be all flat grassland, and yield to the train. This is the entrance into the park. And you can see some of the formations in the distance. And I think it's about 30 miles of dirt road to get back to this place. The road was decent, it's a little washboard, but you could drive a regular car on it. You will get dirty though. There are some camp spots here, but I believe they're just tent camping. And so here's one of the trails. This particular trail is only about a mile long, and it'll take you through some of the interesting features in these formations. But it's generally pretty warm and dry. And here you can see some of the toadstools. These have kind of fallen over the years. And back towards Fort Robinson, you've got a vastly different landscape. This, I believe, is called Soldiers Creek, and it's the Soldiers Creek Wilderness. This area is very lush vegetation, lots of trees and everything all along this whole creek and kind of valley. And this is the road back to Fort Robinson from there, which is big grassland, big views. One of our issues that we had on this trip was frozen cat food. For some reason, in the refrigerator, the cat food freezes. And so Kota was struggling with it for a little while until it thawed out. Hi guys, last day here in Nebraska, Fort Robinson State Park. Nebraska was kind of a last minute decision whether to come here or not from Wyoming. Actually, I'm really glad I did. This particular area of the state I've never been in before. I've seen a lot of other Nebraska, and I've gone through Nebraska a couple times to go to South Dakota. Once starting from Sydney going north, and then can't remember where the other road starts, but it goes through Valentine. This is a little bit to the west of that, not too far from the road from Sydney, but it's vastly different. This is just kind of an amazing place. I can't imagine what it would have been like back in the late 1800s when they first came out and built the fort, and during the Indian Wars and all of that. It must have been just like the end of the United States at that point. It's about 100 degrees today. It's been pretty warm here every day, and it's more humid than Colorado or Wyoming. Great trip. I'm glad I came here. It's something, if you're coming through Nebraska, or if you are going to go to Rapid City, the Black Hills, or whatever, might be worth swinging down. The other option, obviously, is Devil's Tower in Wyoming, which is great as well. But if you're staying in Wyoming, if you are staying in Rapid City, you might be able to do this area in a day trip, a little bit long. Yeah, I think you can definitely do Devil's Tower in a day trip, but it's something to look into, in particular if you're into military history, especially old Western, U.S. relations with, the native peoples of the plains and everything. This is actually the place where Crazy Horse was killed. So there's a lot of important American history here, in particular with the way The native peoples were treated and everything. This was also a German POW camp during World War II, which, you know, I can't imagine, you know, being shipped from Germany all the way over here, kind of the middle of nowhere in Nebraska. But I guess if they got away, there's not much they could do. Yeah, overall, I like it. The state park has several different campgrounds. The one I'm in is Red Cloud, and it's full hookups. It's kind of small, but it's nice. There's some bigger trees around, so there is some shade. It's reasonably priced, $35 a night. You also have to have a pass for the park, which is $8 for out-of-state residents, and I think $6 for in-state. If you're going to be here for a long time, you can buy an annual pass that's pretty reasonable, and it would save you some money. The only kind of downside would be there's not much here as far as shopping. The small town of Crawford is the closest place. It's about 3 miles away. It's got a small grocery store. There's a couple gas stations, and not a whole lot else. You have to go farther east before you get to a bigger city, and that's, if I remember right, it's a little over 40 miles to get there. So it's a bit of a drive just to go, you know, get stuff if you need it. So if you come well prepared, you're not going to have any problems. There's enough stuff in the grocery store and gas stations to get you by with your, you know, your basic needs, or some food, fresh meat or whatever. All right, guys, that's it from Nebraska. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed it, please like, subscribe, you know, do all the stuff. And I will see you next time from South Dakota. Bye.